Hello and welcome everybody. We're going to get started here shortly. I just want to give everyone a chance to join in and get comfortable, grab a coffee, and we're going to get the ball rolling here shortly. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the attendee list and see who we've got in so far. And when that number starts to slow down, we can get started. Awesome. Very cool. Oh, hey, Julie. Nice. It's good to see your name back on the list. I love seeing people coming back for more. It makes me think we're doing something right. Cool. Alrighty, so these numbers are still going up. And go ahead and if you're tuning in live, go ahead and put in the comments where you're tuning in from. I'd love just to see where people are watching, and just I'm located here in Austin, Texas, so if you're near me, just let me know. But I'm excited for today's discussion. It's going to be a good one. All right, cool. So I think we're starting to slow down a little bit, so I think we can go ahead and get started, given the stragglers enough time. All right. Awesome. Here we go. Get my face too big on my screen. I don't need to look at it too much. All righty. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's live panel on the 2022 State of Online Reviews. I am your host and digital marketing evangelist, Justin Meredith, and I am thrilled about today's topic. The experts at Birdeye have been working tirelessly to compile the data of over 80,000 businesses in order to create the 2022 State of Online Reviews report. This is going to be a great discussion, and I can guarantee that each one of you will have something that you can take back with you right after this. So stick around until the end. I assure you it's going to be worth it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's discussion. Feel free to comment, provide your input, and be sure to ask your questions. But before I bring in our guest speakers, I do want to dive into the findings of this report. I just have a few housekeeping things to go over. So if you have any questions, feel free to submit those in the questions tab on your control panel. It should be highlighted here on the screen that I'm sharing. No questions are too small, so feel free to ask and we'll try to answer as many as we can. If you have trouble hearing me, or if the screen freezes or if I disappear, feel free to let us know in the chat so we can try to get that figured out. But now time to get started. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you today's guest speakers. And first up, we have Carissa Newton, who's the Director of Marketing from the Cunningham Restaurant Group. Carissa, it's great to have you here. How are you doing? Where are you? There she is. It's good to see you. So, Carissa, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about the Cunningham Restaurant Group?
Yes, I am Carissa Newton. I lead our marketing efforts for Cunningham Restaurant Group. I am leading all of our corporate marketing, but also marketing for our 15, soon to be 16 concept brands, and that encompasses 36 locations across Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. So a lot of locations and a lot of reviews coming in.
I'm excited to hear about it because I think I'll talk about this a little bit later, but the restaurant industry and reviews have a very deep history together. So I'm excited to get your input on what we've been seeing in this latest report. And for our next speaker, we have Sean Young, who's the Director of Technology and Communications from the Glass Guru. Sean, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Justin.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Glass Gurus? Or the Glass Guru?
Totally on accident. I find myself in my 31st year in franchising. I've worked for several franchisors. I've been a franchisee. I've been an IFA approved digital marketing expert. Don't like to say you've done anything for 31 years in a row consecutively, other than breathing, because it ages you, right? As you said, I oversee the technology communications here for the Glass Guru brand. The Glass Guru is a North American home services franchise with 85 locations in the US and Canada. We're the neighborhood glass company you can trust. All things residential glass restoration, replacement, repair, doors, windows, in-glass pet doors, shower enclosures, pretty much all things residential glass, and we also do some light commercial. We've been in business since 2004 and franchising since 2007.
Wow. And I imagine with the home services industry, it's something that will also have a close relationship with reviews. And when people are trying to find your business, it's definitely a vital, piece to the puzzle. And so what I'd like to do before we really start to dive into this report is I want to toss a poll over to our audience, and I want to get a lay of the land and get a feel for how everyone in the audience is doing, and this will help us guide the conversation and what we're going to be doing or talking about. So the first poll question is, let me make sure I can launch it. Awesome. So the first poll question is, to the best of your knowledge, what percentage of your customers receive a review request from your business? And that could be 0 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, or 75 to 100%. And this is a ballpark range. We're just trying to get an idea of where people are right now. So I'll just give this a couple of minutes and we'll see, we'll check out the results and go through those. All right, I'm seeing a lot of votes coming in. All righty, so I think that's about it. So let's go ahead and close the poll and share the results. So the top result was with 44% of 0 to 25% of customers are receiving a review request from the business. And first, I do want to say that the goal is to reach 100%. And we'll dive into this later in the discussion. But what are your thoughts on this, Sean and Carissa, on these results? Is this something that you've seen, whether it's with colleagues or yourself, or how with these numbers, what are you seeing? And it looks like the second place is 27% of 75 to 100, which is great. And so, like, what are y'all's thoughts on this?
Speaking for us, sorry. Carissa, go ahead. Carissa.
No, that's okay. I think from a restaurant perspective, reviews are kind of a thing that's been around for a long time, and because you're dealing with that dynamic of reservations, and oftentimes the reservations platforms ask for a review, so we have always been hesitant to duplicate those efforts, and I think it's one of those things that people are starting to embrace, finding tactful ways and graceful ways of asking for a review without having to barrage those customers too many times. I think that has been our big hesitancy in just turning that on and flipping that switch in general, is just making sure that we know all the places that our guests might get asked, so that when we do ask through Birdeye, that it is something that doesn't feel like it's too much.
That makes sense. Sean, what about you?
No, the results don't seem too surprising to me, because we've been there. It can be challenging to put together a program that ensures that, as Carissa said, you're being respectful of the communications. You're not beating them over the head with 87 different text messages or emails, but at the same time, are in the home when we communicate with the customers, are we contracting with them, that we're going to be asking at the end, and it's important in today's sort of online marketplace. If you don't have the reviews, A, you may not get found, and B, when they do find you, the trust factor may not be high enough. So
definitely, and like you said, it's a delicate balance to walk between requesting the review and barraging them, and so we'll talk a little bit about this and the numbers that we've seen from people and businesses requesting reviews and the response rates and things like that. So let's get to the good stuff, and I think the best place to start is with the question is, what is the 2022 State of Online Reviews report? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's the result of our experts that analyzed the review data of over 80,000 businesses across all industries in 2021. And it identifies things like, where are people actually reading and leaving reviews, or how are businesses getting new reviews, or which channel performs best when requesting reviews, which is like emails versus text messaging. Which industries are proactively requesting their customers for reviews and responding to them, or even like, how can automation fast track your online reviews in a scalable way, and a lot more. And so for today's discussion, I pulled some of the most noteworthy findings that I felt like were just kind of hot topics and things that people need to know. And so I've pulled those out, and we've got them in the slides, and we're going to go through them. And we're going to just see what kind of impact that these statistics and what we found could have on a local business. So Sean and Carissa, I'd like to give the audience a little bit deeper insight into y'all's businesses. And so first, Sean, what sort of relationship does Glass Gurus have with online reviews, and what's the impact of reviews on your business?
Here at the Glass Guru, we've really been focused over the last 2 years on expanding our reach with reviews, and it didn't really matter the channel. We were trying to, of course, sort of triage our efforts and focus on low effort, high impact as much as we could. We're really trying to create a CX environment that is that delicate balance between art and science. Of course, we've got 85 independently owned franchises, so the best that we can do is coach them. And as we see those franchisees adopt more of the softer skills, we're seeing them improve on reviews. That human power interaction blended with automation is really the best of both worlds, and we've been able to accomplish that over the last year and a half. As Carissa noted with restaurants, it's really implied that not you're looking, hey, I've never eaten Indian food in Frisco, Texas before. Let me find out where the best places are, right? Well, you're already starting on sites. Home services is really similar. While we may not have that schedule your visit app, there are some, but for the most part, it's about looking for recommendations. People are going to Nextdoor, things like that. They're talking to their neighbors, but they're also just going out to the internet and they're looking for reviews. So it's important. People are inviting us into their homes, and something that I learned a long time ago is that's a sacred relationship that you have with the customer, and trust is a critical component of that. Our focus has been paying off. When we started this real focus on soliciting for more online reviews back in early 21, we had 2,998 reviews. We've jumped to 5,174 organizational wide, and that's a 72% increase. And so that's our relationship reviews right now, but we're still looking to get better.
Wow. Carissa, what about you? And I think like as I mentioned earlier, it's safe to assume that the restaurant industry and reviews have quite the history together. So for Cunningham, what does that relationship look like, and what sort of impact have you seen on reviews on your business?
Unmute, sorry about that. The reviews have always been a factor of our business across all of our platforms, whether it be direct with OpenTable and the reservations platforms, or the Yelp and the Facebook and the Google My Business and those types of outlets. What has been interesting for us, we tried to manage for many years manually. We managed not only the reviews and the responses, but aggregating that, watching it, being able to see how we were doing. I think the big transition was us wanting to be more efficient in our processes and viewing and reporting of those reviews across the organization, but then also tracking those reviews, because we were learning very quickly that the impact of the reviews had a significant impact on our SEO results. And so if we could get our restaurants to not only get more reviews, but also respond to more reviews, that their search engine results would start to boost up. And it became an effort for me to maximize my marketing dollars. If I have an organization that's already managing the review side of things, then I'm getting a little bit of SEO boost without that extra added spend. And it's people time and dollars, but it's people time and dollars that are well invested in return business. So that we switched. In early 2019 was when we brought Birdeye on board. We eliminated a full-time equivalent to be able to utilize Birdeye. That person no longer had to create and pull manual reports and do all of this manually. They were able to do this within the Birdeye platform, so that opened up a whole new spectrum of things that we could do from a marketing standpoint in terms of management, education, mentoring with our businesses. The other approach, which was really important, I believe, is we took an approach of not only responding to those negative reviews to try to diffuse that, but simply responding to every single review that we got. Whether it was negative, good, bad, indifferent, we are responding to 100% of our reviews. And we find that that's important because, again, Google and other search engines rank you for your responsiveness as a business. And so we find that that's important. It's also showing value in the amount of reviews that we're getting. The number of reviews has grown. I don't know my number right off the top of my head. Kudos to you, Sean. Ours is I think it's in the hundred of thousands. So it's a lot of reviews across all of those restaurants, but we have seen significant growth not only in the reviews, but improvement in the review responses and the scale. So the scores at the end of the day. Part of that I think is just, you know, ebbs and flows in the business and changes in the market environment. But I also think it's because we've got our eye on the reviews and we're responding to them proactively.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm excited to, and we've got a whole section where we're going to be talking about responding to reviews, and that's like one of the hills that I've decided to stand on forever when it comes to reviews is always, always, always respond to your reviews. It is
Mhm.
just so beneficial in so many different ways that we'll dive into. So let's go ahead and dive into the findings of this report. And let me make sure my mouse is, there we go. And so the first question is are people still leaving reviews? And the question is yes. In fact,
Mhm.
there were 10% more reviews written in 2021 than in 2020. And I know that the first thing that you're probably thinking is, well, the pandemic hit in 2020 and businesses were closed. And that is true. But not all of them. And this is industry wide. Like this is for every business of any kind. This is across 80,000 businesses. So this does have a pretty wide range of applications and things like that. So to see a double-digit growth in reviews year over year is pretty resounding. And yes, there is that little bit of a buffer because there was a bit of a pullback in 2020. But even regardless, I mean, or regardless of that, is still a big jump. And so, Carissa, why do you think this may be happening from like a wide perspective, like of all industries? Why do you think we might be seeing this growth outside of like the pandemic and reopening?
I think it's quick. I think because people have become mobile, it's so much easier across all of those mobile platforms to pop in and do a review. I also think that more and more people have really, they've had to rely on that through the course of the pandemic and these last few years when they don't know hours and they don't know status of whether a business is open or closed. So they're living on those platforms already to understand and make their buying decision. Once they've made their buying decision, they've already got that platform readily available, and so it's easy to leave a review. The other thing that I think that we noticed, and it was really prevalent, is people started making their decisions not just about a review being negative or positive, but people were making their decisions based on things that they saw in the reviews, like things about the sanitation standards, things about the hours, things about online ordering, things about the way that business was operating during that time. And I think that people started to look for that guidance in the reviews because that was the quickest and easiest way to see it. And now that they see that, they go back and now they're also leaving reviews.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe during that time, people relied on reviews and Google and this digital information more than ever. I can't tell you the amount of times
Mhm.
I showed up to a business thinking I was going to get an awesome meal and it was closed early for COVID
Mhm.
hours or whatever, and I had no
Mhm.
idea. And during that time, it was vital. And so,
Mhm.
question for you, Sean. Home services as an industry did reasonably well compared to some others out there. And so, what was Glass Guru's experience like?
Yeah, home services did weather the storm of the pandemic better than many. And you know, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of easy answers. People were sequestered at home, whether it was work or if it was school or otherwise. We were all forced to stay in our abode, and we made a list every day of the things that we didn't like about our house and stuff we wanted to have fixed. And you know, here at the Glass Guru, we were really fortunate to be classified as essential businesses in all states but Michigan and Hawaii. And because glassing glazing is part and parcel to the health and safety of the building envelope and or part and parcel of the building envelope, which is health and safety, we were able to get into the home. It wouldn't have happened without the franchisees, the franchise owners and their teams, because they did a great job about building trust, of course, you know, with some guidance from our team here at the franchisor, but they did the work in the field. They're going into the customer's home, which is that most sacred of environment, and they did a great job at building and keeping the customer's trust. And that was, we really started to see that reflected in the reviews. There were, you know, as Chris has said, there were unique sort of social signals within our reviews that talked about the experience and helped other customers that might be considering us look at that and go, okay, you know, and that was again, just a great job with our franchisees and their teams. We had started our cloud transformation in like 19, so doing meetings like this was actually a little more normal with our franchisees. So we were communicating sometimes daily during COVID. And then, not so coincidentally, while we didn't kick it off, we did actually initiate our partnership with Birdeye. I think in late 2020, we were at least still in negotiations. And then early 21, we kicked that off. But yeah, just props to our franchisees. They did a great job. We had a record year in 20. We thought maybe it was a fluke, and then 21, we had another record year. And this is done mostly on organic growth. We don't add that many new franchise units a year because we're more about quality than quantity when it comes to the franchisees coming in, the business partners we choose. And so really it's existing store growth during 2020 and 2021 that fueled our top line numbers that look so great. So
wow, that's awesome. And in that regard, with reviews during that time, how important was that? We talked about it a little bit earlier, but I imagine with people, rely, like you said, they'll go to Nextdoor or apps like that, and to consult with their neighbors to try to figure out who. But when you're focusing on not just growing as many franchises as possible, but really focusing on the quality of each one that you have, where, like with reviews, how did that help?
It was interesting because while we were doing a sort of haphazard efforts of soliciting for reviews, what we essentially got was organic. They just came to us for people that were already part of the review culture. They didn't need us to remind them. They sought us out. As an example, we have a loyal following in our customer base that are Yelp. They like to leave their reviews there, and we don't solicit actively. They go seek out Yelp on their own and post them there. So it was really critical, I think. Again, for the same reason that people look at reviews, it really was magnified during 20 and 21 in the midst of the pandemic, because everything in the outside world was so mysterious, right? It really wasn't that different than 19, but it came to the forefront more, I believe. And really, just to echo what Carissa also said, I think the importance increased during that period of time, and the reviews were critical for us. We just get more of them now.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Like they weren't bad before, we're just getting more of them now. And so what reviews we did have during 2020 obviously were critical, and those people inviting us into their home. Bear in mind that somewhere between 30 and 40% of every job we do of our revenue is repeat and referral. So we actively work that as much as we can.
Yeah, that word of mouth is absolutely crucial. So let's keep moving. I know we've got some statistics, and I really want to make sure that we leave time for questions. And so if you're watching right now, be sure to ask your questions. I've seen a couple come in, and we'll definitely make sure to get to those. So just a reminder to do that. And so for the next statistic that our experts uncovered in this report pertain to, and we break it, and this report is awesome because it breaks it down by industry. And this is one of the restaurant industry statistics that we found. And that's 63% more restaurant reviews were written in 2021. An absolute massive jump. And I think, like I said earlier, this could be part of the pandemic, but 63 is a huge number regardless of the situation. I think that this just goes to show how important it is. And so my question for you is, Carissa, when you see this and when you think back to Cunningham over the past couple of years, you mentioned that you did see a jump, but how exactly did that go about? Like, what have you been seeing on your side in regards to the number of reviews coming in?
Well, our volume of reviews has always been strong. Part of that, I think, is the culture that we have embedded within our organization. We're very heavy on the experience. There are a lot of things that we cannot control in the guest experience, but the one thing that we can control to some extent is how that guest feels during that experience of dining with us. And so historically, we always got a ton of reviews, but we have seen that increase. I think our increase is closer to about 45%. But the one interesting thing, as you show, that Google has gained so much more traction on the review side. OpenTable has always been one of our primary review sources, and Google has grown significantly in that picture. Yelp is always a piece of that puzzle, but Google has seen a lot more activity. And I think that's beneficial in the sense that, like I said before, with the SEO results, Google is really looking and ranking for how you're interacting on your reviews. If you're mentioning that guest, if you're mentioning pieces or tidbits and keywords from that review, they're ranking for that. And so I think because of that, and because of the prevalence of what is showing up in search, people they just go back to it. And I think the other instance is if you're in Google Maps and you're mapping to the location, you've already got that app handy, and it's very easy to do that. But it is really interesting to see the increases that we've seen. And ours have skewed much more positive. Like our net promoter has gone significantly higher over the last few years. And initially, I think there was a little bit of a halo during the pandemic, because I think people were just trying to be generous and not too harsh. And then now I think it's getting to the point where those are genuine positive sentiments that are growing over time. You're not seeing as much negativity on the review side. You're seeing a lot of insights that are positively driven.
Definitely. And that was a perfect answer, because that segues right into the next stat that I found, and that's that 71% of all reviews were written on Google, and that's across all industries for everything, meaning that only 29% of the other reviews consisted of things like Facebook, Trustpilot, Angie's List, etc. And what we found also, which was really interesting, and this is something that I don't have on the slide, and as to what you were saying about the SEO and the keywords, is there was a 100% increase in search queries for fancy restaurant near me, and for search queries that contained the term takeout restaurants went up 400%. So people were searching for these things, and they were looking for, the businesses that they want to find. And and I think this just shows that and that just shows the stronghold that Google has on this, because if that's how they find the business, that's naturally where they leave the review for the business. And so you had mentioned that OpenTable was one of your primary review sources. So overall, what channels of reviews do you say most of your reviews come from, Carissa?
I would say OpenTable and Google are the two primaries. I would say Google is gaining traction in surpassing what we get on the OpenTable side. Most of our restaurants are reservation driven, and so because of that, they're interacting with OpenTable sometimes before they might interact with our website or with the review process. So because of that, that's pretty well entwined in the interaction. Yelp, TripAdvisor is out there. We are starting to see more growth on the Facebook side. It is interesting to see the differences in reviews and whether it's negative sentiment, positive sentiment, and see which review platforms trend more to one side or the other, because we do see that too. We do see OpenTable and Google and some of Facebook tend to skew more positive, whereas TripAdvisor and Yelp tend to skew on the negative side if there are negative reviews. On the TripAdvisor side, you get a lot of travelers, so you start to see some themes and some trends as you look at those different review sources.
Yeah, and it makes sense with OpenTable, and I think a lot of it depends on where their customer journey starts. So for me, I've made a lot of reservations through OpenTable, and so naturally, like whenever I leave a review, it's through there, because that's what that's how it starts. And so that makes sense to me. And one of the cool things, like this is a little tidbit about Birdeye, and this is just for everybody, is whenever you send a review request through Birdeye, you can actually have the option to have the Google review button there and the OpenTable button there, so you can have both options available for your customers, and you can allow them to choose which ones they want to do. And so let's keep moving. And now let's talk about the home services industry. And this one's a little bit different, because 42% of home services reviews are written on sites other than Google. So that's talking about those Angie's Lists and those other maybe more niche sites. So Sean, what about from your experience? How important is Google as a review source for your business? And what about those other ones as well?
Google's critical for us. In fact, we're Google Premier Partners. We are the marketing agency for our franchisees, and we've got a great team on the digital marketing side, focusing on the SEM and SEO. And so we're always trying to, in every action that we perform digitally, are we enhancing those channels that are of the greatest impact to us? Digital still our number one source of new leads. While we had $1.3 million, which is probably a pretty small budget for a lot of companies, for us, it's a big deal. $1.3 million of franchisee money spent on paid advertising, primarily through Google in 21. But organic's where it's at. 2/3, 3/4 of our leads at any given point in time are coming organically. And that is part and parcel because of reviews and those types of things. We're actually 81.46% Google. Yelp is our next, and we don't solicit for Yelp reviews actively, but they're at almost 12%. Facebook is at 6%. So we actually don't have any of the other traditional home improvement sites driving reviews as much as we do the channels that give us, in our opinion, the greatest SEO value, which would, for me, would be Google and Facebook. Birdeye, the Birdeye review page is almost at 1%, which is kind of interesting because that's just like a little added bonus of working with Birdeye is the SEO value of that page. So, but that's our relationship with Google. We're very much a Google house, both on the digital marketing side, but also behind the scenes. So,
yeah, definitely. And so now I'd like to ask the audience, where are the majority of your reviews coming from? So we're going to do another poll, and I just want to get a sense of, because obviously, we're seeing some different things and like that, and I just want to see what everybody else is at, really. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll, and there we go. Oh, never mind. So it looks like I accidentally launched and ended the poll. The button was too quick for me. So if you want to comment, feel free to comment. Where are the majority of your reviews coming from? And I think that's an interesting thing. And you mentioned Facebook, and in the report, we don't have it on this webinar today, but if you're to do it, I highly recommend it to download the report from our website and check it out. But we've seen an increase in Google reviews and a slight decrease in Facebook. And I think that might just be kind of, as we were talking about earlier, is like, where does that customer journey start? And I think a lot of the times it's like some people are finding it on Facebook through those groups, through those neighborhood groups and things like that, but as well as on Google. And so let's keep moving on. Looks like we're gonna have a good amount of time for Q&A, so please be sure to send in your review, your questions. So the next stat that we found was that 15% more review requests were sent in 2021. And this is something that is vitally important, and this is something that we've actually received a couple of questions about, such as like, how many review requests should we be sending, or is it really wise to send a request to all of your customers? And from, I've talked with multiple SEO experts through these webinars, which is a really cool thing that I've been able to do, and I've learned a lot from them. And the answer to that is yes, you need to ask all of your customers for a review. The more requests you send, the more reviews you get. And if you're anything like Cunningham or the Glass Guru, you're gonna have a lot of happy customers. I've seen y'all's review ratings, and they're insanely awesome. So don't be afraid to ask for reviews. In one of my past webinars, I hosted the owner of an SEO agency named Joey Randazzo, and I asked him, I was like, what are the biggest challenges that your clients face whenever they're dealing with reviews? And he gave me two of the biggest hurdles that these businesses face. And the first one is there is a kind of a fear of asking for reviews. Especially it's like, okay, well, how do I do it? Do we ask them in person? Do we send them a text or an email? Exactly, like, what's going on? And and there's a certain kind of level of hesitation. It's like, well, we don't know if we're going to get a bunch of negative ones. And he said that is what a lot of his clients face. And it's just one of those things that you just have to just do it, because if you want more reviews, you got to ask for more reviews. And there's probably a lot of happy customers that would have left a review if you just asked them. And then the other challenge that he said that they were facing is, well, we ask, but we don't really get them. And that leads into some of the stuff that we'll be talking about next. And that's, you need to make it easy for your customers to leave a review. if you request a review, like maybe you're in person, you're like, hey, by the way, be sure to leave us a review on Google or Facebook or XYZ. That it's you need to make it easy is the best way for me to say it. Is if you just tell them, they're going to forget as soon as they walk out the door. But if you can either send them a text, an email, or some sort of even like some sort of direct message where they can just click on a link, click on where they want to leave a review, leave the review, and they're done. That is going to exponentially help you increase the number of reviews you have on your website. So let's keep moving. And the next thing that it's related to this is 92% of review requests sent from the Birdeye platform were automated. Requesting reviews from each of your customers can be really challenging, and not to mention time consuming. And this is something that you had touched on earlier when you were telling us about Cunningham, Chris, is that it takes a lot of hours and it takes a lot of manpower. And so if you're doing that manually, it can take a lot of time. And so if your CRM or your customer management system is integrated with your reviews platform, it literally puts your reviews on autopilot. And so that's one of the cool things about Birdeye is that we integrate with like 3,000 plus softwares, which means that this is is that each one of your customers gets a request to write a review, and the more requests you send out, the more you get. And so this brings us to a logical next question that may have crossed your mind. And this is something you touched on earlier, Chris, that's the negative reviews. And what do you do with negative reviews? And so I'm going to have both of you guys answer that question. But first, I want to talk, I want to mention that negative reviews are not bad. It's an opportunity for you to learn about the customer experience that you're providing and allows you to improve. But it also gives you an opportunity to respond to them and show other potential customers who are on Google looking at your business to see, oh, well, this guy left a one-star review, but I saw that the business responded and really made the effort and took the time out of their day to respond. And it seems like they really care about their customers. And it's not just, we're just trying to, get the next, customer in and out the door. So, so with that, Sean, what about from your perspective? Are you requesting reviews? And if so, what's the process for that? I do know that you have automation. And so how has that been working out for you?
Yeah, just to touch base on the automation, we don't have one of those magic CRMs that automatically connects with Birdeye, but it was an easy integration, and we're actually looking to expand upon that. We automated our reviews. Well, I'm going to say 99.8% because everyone hates certainty. It's actually 100%, but maybe there's a contact here or there that fails, so I can't say 100%. So I'll say 99.8, all completed jobs. That data is passed over to Birdeye, and within one business day, of course, those things go out. We're scrubbing the data so that we ensure that if we have a mobile number, it's being passed over, but then we have an email address as well. It's going out through both channels. That was great for a little while, but we started noticing tremendous deficits between one franchise to the next, and they were both basically taking advantage of automation. The franchisees that had been exceeding in terms of the number of reviews that they were getting were those that were also following up manually. Maybe you don't have a full-time person picking up the phone and calling everybody that ate at your restaurant, but if somebody invited us into their home and they dropped $1,200 with us, yeah, we're gonna have somebody call and we're gonna follow up. Hey, how did everything go? Here's some information on the care and feeding of your new shower. Did you happen to see that request for our customer satisfaction survey and to just submit some reviews? Oh, you didn't see that. We're also coaching those franchisees that are actively doing that. We're coaching them on how to use QuickSend, logging into Birdeye, making sure that we're using that omni-channel messaging tool to communicate with customers the way they want to be communicated with, and to be able to do those ad hoc communications very, very quickly. And we're actually doing a little case study with a couple of those locations, and I'm sure what's going to happen is we're going to see that's part and parcel to why they're transcending the numbers elsewhere. We'll turn it into curriculum and we'll coach all of our franchisees on that. But yeah, automation has been great. That's the only way to fly.
And so, building off of that, as I mentioned earlier with that webinar, I do want to give everybody a heads up that is available on demand on our website. And we just do a huge deep dive into all things Google reviews, how they affect SEO. And so during that webinar, I had the SEO expert with me, but we also had another customer. So we got the business perspective and the SEO perspective of the impact of Google reviews. So be sure to check that out. And so going off of that, the next, going off of review requests. And so, Sean, this is something that you and I talked about in our dry run, and it made me excited whenever you started talking about this. But how are businesses getting reviews? And so 49% of review requests in 2021 were sent by text message, and they brought in a click-through rate of 32%. And so let me make sure I got all my stats here before. See, I knew there's 3 or 4. Okay, so Sean, what are your thoughts on texting your customers for reviews or in general? And do you see SMS text continuing to grow in popularity among businesses and customers?
Yeah, I mean, the convenience of it makes SMS a preferred method of communication for a lot of people. It defies those generational gaps that we often, oh, millennials like to, no, everybody likes getting things via SMS. My mom won't stop texting me now. It's like, okay, she can't read an email, she doesn't know how to log in her computer, but she'll send text messages. And so I feel like we're really behind the curve here at the Glass Guru, and we've got some work to do. And there's a big forecasted increase in SMS being used, by businesses. It really isn't some new trend. There have been some companies that have done it really, really well, and I think the just groundswell that we're seeing of businesses wanting to do more with SMS is kind of a byproduct of realizing, oh wow, we're kind of behind the times, and there are great tools out there like Birdeye that can help with that. And we're in the process of currently implementing mass SMS with Birdeye, of course, and hope to have that up and running next quarter. So that's how we feel about SMS.
That's awesome, and I'm excited. I'm excited to hear about how that implementation with the texting goes for you guys.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think it's gonna be one of those things that will require a balance of making like as we mentioned earlier, of not bombarding your customers with a bunch of text messages, and you want to develop that relationship organically with them to where there's a level of comfort and trust between the two of you, where it's like, okay, like whether it's sending a really helpful blog, just like, hey, we thought you might be interested in this and it's a really helpful piece of information, we're not trying to sell you on anything.
Yeah.
And then other times it could be like, here's a great discount on what we're doing right now. And so I think that's just something that is going to continue to develop and grow throughout really all business. I think that relationship is just getting closer and closer, and consumers want to feel like the businesses care about them, which goes back to what we were saying about responding to reviews, because that does mean a lot. And people will even change their reviews based on the response of a business. And so actually, Chris, is that something that you've seen within Cunningham? Have you ever seen respond, because you mentioned that you try to respond to all of your reviews, even the negative ones.
Sure.
Have you seen a star or rating change because of that?
I started educating our restaurants about not only responding to 100% of the reviews, but making sure that the response on those negative reviews was showcasing, the care, the experience, the same level that we're delivering to those guests, or that we want them to deliver to the guests. And what I found interesting is 2 things happened. One was there were guests that told us they made a choice to dine with us because of how they saw us handling our guest experience and our comments. And then the second really bizarre one that I never expected is I started getting these pings of restaurants that would have either a negative review or something that looked like it was going to go somewhat negative. The manager responded very quickly, and in that response, being able to recover the guest almost in a few instances while the guest was still in the dining room, and then having that guest go in and change their review response. I didn't expect that to be something that happened, and now I will call on those particular restaurants to and call them out and show our restaurant managers what happened. Some of it was, I taught them to use mobile and to watch the reviews on mobile and use the app. And so if they're using the app and they've got all the reviews right there in front of them, they can see that guest that is unhappy in the dining room and posting on Yelp, and they can go out and resolve that and diffuse that with the guest, turn that experience around, and hopefully, make it a positive experience, if not even a positive review. And that has happened multiple times.
Wow. That's incredible. And we're gonna dive a little bit more into the act of responding to reviews. But
Mhm.
first, we've got another poll, and I will get it right this time. And let's go ahead and do that. So launch. There it goes. It does. It staggers a little bit. So when I think it doesn't launch, I click it again, and then it'll close it. So the question is, do you respond to reviews of your business? And the answers are yes, but only the positive ones. Yes, all of them. We try, but we do not have enough time to respond to all of them, or no. So let's give it the audience a second to answer that. I'm excited to see these results. Wow. So far, this is really interesting. I'm excited to pull up this next slide. It seems like we've got a rock star group of businesses here in the audience. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and close and share the results. So in our audience poll, 84% are saying that they respond to all of their reviews. That is incredible. Like that is a huge, huge thing, because as we've been talking about throughout this whole discussion, it's really, really important, not only from a customer experience standpoint, but also from an SEO standpoint. So let's go ahead and hide these, and we'll dive right into that next slide. And that's that businesses responded to 41% of reviews in 2021, which means that this group in this audience is killing it. We've doubled that number just in this sample size right here, which is great to see. So in the act of responding to reviews, Carissa, you just dove into it, and you told a couple of really awesome stories about how people actually change their reviews. So Sean, on that side of things for you, what is your process on responding to reviews? How do you handle that?
I'm still thinking about Carissa's story. That's awesome. I can just see that lady at the table and then have
Mhm.
somebody come out from the back. So that's, how cool is that? We're initially using automated responses on everything. We tried to create a catalog of automated responses that would be timely. The biggest challenge that we have is we don't have a kind of an RM expert that works here at the franchisor. We're heavily dependent on the franchisees and their staff to follow up, and we can't predict that they're all going to respond manually. So we do automate those responses. We try to round robin those responses so they don't look canned, but we absolutely are educating our franchisees on social signals and how important it is to also go on and add another little personal comment about the job, about how great it was to meet the customer and their little dog Fluffy, whatever it is. We've got some rapport with that customer, could be able to continue that online. And the ones that they really have to respond manually are the negative ones. They have to. It is this great opportunity to make it right. They've given you permission to hopefully make it right. One last opportunity to make it right. I own another business outside of, actually two, outside of the Glass Guru, and I'm proud to say that that business back in California is a 5-star business, and we've been in business for 10 years and we're a 5-star business. And we relish that opportunity for somebody to come and give us a 3-star review or a 2-star review, because it's likely that it wasn't about the customer experience. It was something that we could use to help educate customers about our customer experience and all those various steps. It's the same thing. If you actually are able to, on a digital platform, like Carissa said, you're able to work with the guests, you're able to come to some sort of fruition, make it right, whether they update the review or not. All of that text is readable now and forever. And yeah, you have to be respectful. It's not about being proven right? You're not trying to win a battle with the review. Sometimes you just have to agree to disagree on something, but it can be done in a very respectful way. And more often than not, we find that we can help make things right. And it's just, again, another opportunity to make a great impression.
Exactly. And I think that's so important when talking to the overall customer experience, because it's not just when they walk in the door and they're current, like the process is happening now, but even afterwards, there's still a customer experience after they're no longer just a customer, in the moment. And then also on the SEO side is one of the things that Google has always done, despite whether there's algorithm changes or anything else that's going on, their mission has always stayed the same, and that's to provide correct and accurate information for their users. And that's something, and because of that, that's what they look at the reviews for. They want to see what are real people saying about this business, and they value that when it comes to SEO, because they value what reviews, because that's what other people value when they look at a business. And so if your customers are looking at reviews, so is Google. So that's something that's really important to think about whenever you are managing your reviews and responding to them, is that not only are other people paying attention, but so is Google, and that has an impact on your ranking. And it's not major. It's not like that's the only thing. There's a ton of factors that come into play when ranking a business on Google, but that is one of them. And we've talked about it extensively in our past webinars, and so be sure to go ahead and check those out. Now let's keep moving on and with our next, and that is Google reviews obtained by businesses on Birdeye had an average rating of 4.6 stars. So Google reviews obtained by Birdeye, and the average rating was 4.6 stars, and that's because Birdeye makes it super easy to not only just request reviews, but also makes it easier for customers to leave them. As I was saying earlier, if you're anything like Glass Guru or Cunningham Restaurant, you probably have a ton of happy customers. And I mean, Sean, he just said he had a 5-star business. That just shows the amount of care he has for the customer experience. And so there are probably a lot of customers who would be more than happy to leave you a great review if you just ask them. And one of the great things about Birdeye is that we make it, almost as easy as it humanly can be for a customer to leave a review. I think at max it's like a 3-click process, maybe less or more. Just it's very, very easy. And so before we jump into Q&A, I want to go over a couple of final takeaways, but I wanted to dive into the fact that Birdeye is not just reviews. We provide an entire experience for your customers, from discovery all the way through payments and then after. And so first, thank you guys so much for all of your input, and don't go away yet. We still got some things we want to talk about. But with basically the entire customer journey, from the digital storefront of your business listings, like your Google business profile, and being able to manage those, especially if you have multiple locations like Cunningham or the Glass Guru, it can be really hard to manage all of those if you're doing that manually. And you have to log into a separate Google business profile for one location, then log out, log back in for a different one, and so on and so forth. And that's one of the things that's awesome about Birdeye. It's all in the same dashboard. You can manage all of those from one place, and you don't have to spend so much time going in and out of different things. But it's not just the Google business profile. It's all the way through messaging your customers. We even have a payment function where you're able to collect payments easier. Reviews, obviously, surveys, analytics, and more. And that's all, like I said, on the one dashboard platform where you can see everything. And no matter how many locations you have, no matter where you're receiving reviews from, and as I touched on earlier, it's all automated. And so I could talk about this all day, and I think hearing from you guys would be much more entertaining for our audience. So Sean and Carissa, and Sean, you can go first. What has your experience with Birdeye been like? You've touched on it a little bit throughout the discussion, but if you were to put it in a nice bow to wrap up this talk.
I'm an army of one here at the Glass Guru. On the communication side, I have a colleague that works with me on that stuff for like press releases and outbound comms. But when it comes to technology implementation, I'm an army of one, and so I depend heavily on a stable of not vendors, but true technology partners. I have vendors. They're the ones that they're the one trick pony. They do a small piece of work, and I probably don't work with them again. Partners are part of our strategy. They all play at the table, and Birdeye has been a great partner. It's been a pleasure to work with them. Virtually everybody on the team has been professional and responsive, particularly on the front end where, I'm a self-taught technology person, right? So I like to have people in the room that are smarter than me, and Birdeye has been able to deliver those folks kind of on demand as we were in our implementation process. But just great feature sets. We're currently love listings. Each franchise location has something like 50 listings that we manage through Birdeye, surveys, reviews. We're implementing referrals as we speak, and as I said earlier, we're looking to kick off that mass SMS campaign capability, doing it the same way we did with EMS, and not not beating them over the head, right? So starting with sort of the life of a job stuff, maybe getting our toes in the water in 2 or 3 quarters with content marketing. And then at the very end, once we've developed some degree of trust with that, we start maybe doing overt call to action marketing via SMS. But I'm confident that Birdeye will be there every step of the way.
Awesome. And Carissa, throwing it over to you. How has your relationship with Birdeye been like so far?
Well, I have been an army of one at times, and then I've had staff, and it's fluctuated back and forth. But it's been a game changer for us in being able to scale, because our business, we just keep growing. When I came on board, we had 20 locations, and now we're up to 36, and we're going to have 4 to 5 every single year after this. And being able to add on new locations and manage those listings and the review side and make sure that it's accurate and it's responsive, those are critical factors for me, because I don't have huge budget dollars to be spending on advertising or SEO. And if I can leverage it that way through some of the things that we manage in Birdeye, then I'm absolutely going to do as much as I can there. One fun story, we actually use insights pretty extensively, and it's interesting. I never dreamed that we would be using them like this, but we use the insights side of the Birdeye tool for 2 things: to look for clues on things that we need to train our teams better on. So steps of service, either that or ways that things are prepped, cooked, plated. If we see those comments come through in insights and we see something occurring on a regular basis and that becomes a prevalent theme, then that is something that our training teams can start to address. And I've been able to bring some of those topics forward to say, hey, I'm seeing a lot of this, and maybe we need to add this into our training management system. The other area, which is a fun area, is menu changes. So I don't know if you guys have ever had a restaurant that you're really passionate about and they go and change their menu and they remove your one favorite item. Inevitably, we change our menus seasonally because we try to source a lot of things locally. And when we make those menu changes, we inevitably hear from those guests that are either upset that we took something off or they're thrilled that we brought something on. So we watch those insights for those cues and for that insight, and to really develop that further and share that with our culinary teams when we're developing our menus. Look for, things that pop out in reviews frequently.
And that's an incredible story, and that's something that when it comes to those insights, it's really interesting how you can discover a lot about yourself and your business just by having them. There's a lot of it's one of those things where you kind of think about where I was like, I didn't even know I had a problem until someone had showed me it. There's a lot of there's a lot of flying blind out there, so to speak, and
Right.
so being able to have that extra visibility and your the ability to see that and be able to act on it is incredible. And so let's move on, and I want to go over a couple of the final takeaways from this, and then I'd like to offer the floor to you guys to offer your final bits of advice to the audience. And so the first takeaway is ask all of your customers for a review. The more review requests equals more reviews. And then the next is to respond to all of your reviews. For reasons we've touched on in this discussion, but it's great for SEO, it's great for your customer experience, and if in Carissa's case, it allows her to actually improve her rating, and being able to turn those negative reviews almost into positive ones. And it's so vital to do that, and it carries so much weight in the mind of potential customers and your current customers that you as a business really do care about your customers and not just their wallets. And I think that that's something that should continue to grow. I mean, according to the report that we've seen, 41% of businesses are responding to them. And according to this audience, which is awesome, is 84%, I think is what it was, are responding, and that's great, you know. And I think the end goal is to get that to 100. And the last takeaway is automation. If you are an army of one and you're trying to accomplish the asking all of your customers for review and responding to all your reviews as an army of one, that could be really, really difficult, especially if you're like Cunningham, who's gotten hundreds of thousands of reviews over the years. That's a ton of manual labor and like man hours that are being used on this, when it really could be set on autopilot. And there's templated responses for, you know, if we receive a 4-star review, we can send this response. If we receive a 2-star review, let's flag it and make sure someone reaches out to them personally. There's a lot of different ways that you can manage your reviews and your entire online presence without having to spend so much time on it. Now, before we jump into Q&A, and I know that we've reached the top of the hour, so I understand if you need to jump out, you know, you got other meetings. I don't want to take too much of your day. The recording of this webinar will be provided. But if you'd like to stick around for Q&A, I've got a couple of minutes and we can get through 1 or 2 of these. But real fast, Carissa and Sean, you guys are absolute rock stars in this space. This is why we have you on. Like, we wanted to make sure that we had you two here because you are just experts in this. And so what I want to offer the floor for you guys to give any advice to some of the people in the audience who may be starting their journey right now. What is something that you wish someone had told you 3 or 4 years ago in regards to reviews and how to manage them, that might have helped you back then, but maybe you had to learn the hard way?
Carissa, why don't you go first?
Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry.
I think for me, not trying to tackle it all overnight, you know, obviously reviews, listings, everything that we deal with, messaging, customers and things like that, it all takes time, and it takes time to build processes that stand the test of time. And so I think it's take one bite at a time and try to work through one feature or function and make sure that your teams are really good and well versed on that, and then move to the next. I wasn't able to introduce insights or, you know, talk about net promoter scores until we were very good at responding to 100% of our reviews. And even with that, it's a constant training process and reinforcing that and talking about the automation of the things that we've built, you know, for canned messages, for certain ratings and things like that. I think don't feel like you have to tackle it all at once. Do a little bit at a time and take it in smaller chunks, and eventually you're going to have a platform. There's pieces of Birdeye that we're not using today that I absolutely want to evaluate and explore further. So it's taking one at a time and working through that and getting better each day.
Awesome. Sean, what about you?
Just great advice. Yeah, absolutely. You know, have a plan. I'm still trying to get over the whole rockstar comment. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Have a plan and understand that you really, unless you are not like Carissa and I, you know, are armies of one, right? Eat the elephant one bite at a time. Leverage the team at Birdeye. Your questions or challenges are probably not unique to your business. They've probably seen it before, and they've always been pretty good about, you know, whether they show templates or default processes. They call that a lot, right? This is the default way people do it, and there's a reason, because it seems to have the greatest response rate, that type of thing. Automation is great, but don't forget that you have a cultural piece that you really need to push downstream, and that's the service-centric human element that's required to really allow this technology to be a force multiplier. Automate, but through communication, set expectations throughout the life of a job, even if it's somebody speaking to how important customer service is to us culturally as part of setting somebody up for their meal, right? For us, we have multiple touch points throughout the life of the job where we can explain to the customers how important our ability to measure our customer service processes is important internally. So there's our CS survey, and how important it is for potential new customers to see what it's like to work with the Glass Guru. There's our reviews, and we try to seed that and sort of contract with people as we get to the life of the job, and then interact directly and use that automation, and just make sure that those technology tools are an implied part of that human experience. If you can do those things, you'll have great successes. and start slow and just work those things into your plan, and then just pick it off one at a time. Because if you were like us 3 years ago, there was nowhere to go but up. So doing something right is better than doing nothing right, or very few things right. You don't have to do everything all at once. You'll see incremental improvement with each little step you make with Birdeye.
Awesome. And so I didn't realize how far over we've gone. So I don't know if we're going to be able to jump too far into the Q&A. I do believe we've had someone helping out with the question. So if your question was answered, I'm hoping that that was sufficient. But if not, I will make sure to email you and let you know with an answer, because I don't want any questions to go unanswered. My whole goal of this is to educate people and really help them figure out how to, improve their review process, grow their online reputation, show up higher on Google, and just overall be successful when it comes to to being online. Because nowadays the most valuable the most valuable real estate on the internet is that first page of Google, and it's just so vital for that. And I think that that's something that we can help with. And so thank you, Carissa and Sean, so much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure to have you guys on, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. I feel like at the rate you guys are going and bringing in all of these awesome reviews, and you're growing so well, I'm gonna have to invite you back next year for the 2023 report, and
see how much we grew.
exactly. So we'll be able to talk even more about it and dive into it, and hopefully we can have some new interesting insights to talk about. Well, with that being said, the recording of this session will be made available on the Birdeye website shortly, and you should be receiving an email within the next few to 24 hours with an email link to the recording. And also, please, 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 we've talked about it all day, but go to our website and check out that State of Reviews online report. It's packed full. I was barely even able, we've talked about it for over an hour, and I was barely even able to scratch the surface of it. It's insane. The Birdeye, the guys like on the team that did this really, really went in deep on it, and it's just a great report that really gives you a lot of insights and allows you to compare yourself to other companies in your industry too. So you're able to see like how you actually stack up against the competition. It's not just everybody. And check out the Cunningham Restaurant Group and the Glass Guru if you're in an area with one of their franchises. We've talked about how awesome their ratings are and how great they're doing. So clearly they're doing something right with their customer experience. So be sure to check them out and have a great